If possible, 30, we like to start on time. We particularly want to start on time for Wally's sake because she's a lady. And she belongs to the ladies. And the ladies, looks like, are going to come in and join us for a while to hear Wally, and then they're going to go and have their meeting. So we don't want to delay their meeting too much either. Welcome to the German Genealogy Group meeting of January. We're very happy that you came. These are very special meetings, and the people who have volunteered to tell their stories are very special people. Not all stories are easy to tell. Some are more fun than others. They all vary, and they're all different, and they're all going to tell us something about the traditions, the cultures, the communities that was left behind in Europe. Part of that is a different place, part of that is a different time. But all of it will be interesting to us. We're going to start without too much ado with our first guest this evening. We have two, Heinz Ambrosch and Wally Alberer. Waltraut Alberer. I knew I wouldn't get say it right. She has kindly said she would tell us her story tonight, and she did it with a twinkle. So I'm just going to pass it on to her and let her have it.
Hello everybody. My name is Waltraut Alberer, but I changed it to Wally because it is easier. My name is so many times mispronounced that I got sick of it. So I call myself Wally, and you cannot do anything but Wally. So most of them even think I'm a boy, but I'm not really. So I was born August 24th, 1924. That makes me 83 years old, and I hope to see 84 in August. So I was born into a large family. I have 4 sisters, that makes us 5 girls. And for the life of me, I cannot understand how my mother could cope with all 5 of us, because she was the only child. But she did okay. So we lived in Schlammen, which is a very small town. So we lived there for 4 years, and then we moved to Bad Lippspringe.
Is that all in this area?
Yeah, that's where I am, near Paderborn. So that might be well better known than Bad Lippspringe. But Bad Lippspringe is a Kurort. I think you would call it a spa. So people came there to get a little better. It was mostly for TB. And all the people from the coal mines came to get relief. We had very good air. We had 3 natural wells where the water came out of the ground. And I wish I would have paid more attention to what this water did, but I didn't. I was too young for that. But it must have been good water because it was sent all over Germany. So I'm very sorry I cannot tell anything about that. So when I was 4 years old, we moved to Bad Lippspringe, and it was not very easy to find an apartment for so many people. So finally one woman took the chance and rented to us what is called das Hinterhaus. That was the main house, and then in an L shape there was an apartment built, and there was room galore. So that was very good for us children until we went to school, because that house was on the outskirts from Bad Lippspringe, and we had to have a long, long walk to go to school. But we did it. But we had to leave an hour early in order to make it on time. That's how far it was. So my religion was Lutheran, and we were in the minority in that town. They were mostly Catholics. So, but we had our own school, our own church, and it was really nice to live on that place. But we never could be like kids could be dirty, you know, get dirty, because for the patients who were there, who watched us like a hawk, you know. So, but we had fun anyway. So then we went to school, and for 8 years, and then we graduated one after another. And the jobs were not too many around, so my father took whatever he could get in order to feed his family. Then in 1933, the Nazis came, and things looked up. There were jobs galore, and everybody had work and was doing well. So my father applied at the Bäder Betriebsgemeinschaft for a job and worked himself up to be in charge of all the Kurparks and the alleys. We had these long alleys with fruit trees, like apples, cherries, and plums. And in the fall, when the fruit got ripe, the townspeople met there, and the trees were auctioned up for the fruits on it. So it was more like a community picnic. We kids had a ball, could eat all the fruit we wanted, and there was still enough to can or preserve it. So that was, and then we moved into town. This house was on the outskirts of Bad Lippspringe, so we moved in the middle of Bad Lippspringe. And then the war in Poland started. And we got bumped out. We were living in a big house on a corner of an intersection, and every night we had to go into the basement because of the air raids. So that one night we went downstairs, and I always felt safe when my father was in town. I figured if the bomb hits us, he will really get me out of the basement. So I really trusted him. So and above the basement there was a China store. You should have heard the noise when the bomb hit. It was unbelievable. I don't even like to think about it. So we could not live in that apartment anymore. So since my father worked for the Bäder Betriebsgemeinschaft, the boss had said we should move into what was called the Kneiphaus. I don't know whether you are familiar with Kneipkur. You don't? Who is familiar with it? You. Kneipkur is hot and cold water treatment. It's good for your blood circulation. So let me think, how was it? When my sister was a physical therapist, she took care of the Kneipkur and massages, and my other sister did the inhalations, because you know with TB you have a very big problem with breathing. So that was Bad Lippspringe. So, and I and all the girls and boys my age, that makes me 83 years old, we belonged to the Hitlerjugend, you know. I was in BDM, and I was very good in sports, and went from one event to another to compete. I won some, I lost some. So, but it was absolutely beautiful being in sports. So then I was approached whether I would take care of the children who were in the Kinderlandverschickung. Kinderlandverschickung means they took the children out of the, I call it danger zones, and they sent them to safer places for a half a year. They had schooling there, and I had to take care of them in their free time in the afternoon and in the evenings. So my first assignment was Czechoslovakia. So I had absolutely no experience with kids. So I went with what we did when we were children. So I was 17 years old and was in charge of 36 children, aged from 8 to 16. That was a very difficult age because with the 8-year-old you had more to act like a kid, and the 16-year-olds were young adults and they were very difficult to handle. And coming out of the danger zones like Dortmund or out where all the coal mines were, so we in Czechoslovakia, when we were in Czechoslovakia, the war with Russia broke out. So and then there was a big area in Dortmund, and most of the kids came from Dortmund. So it was terrible to wait for the parents to write letters that they were okay, you know. So and the children were all worried about their relatives, you know. And it was and what was the hardest was to get to know what made them tick, you know, in order for me to know what to do with them. And luckily, they all went for sports, and that was my field. So I occupied them afternoon. Then they liked to sing. I sang with them. And before we went to the Kinderlandverschickung, we had to take a course with first aid, you know, and all this, so that when something happens, that I could give them the first aid, you know. So, but that was for a half a year. We were in Czechoslovakia. I didn't know the language, and I thought, oh, I count on the teacher. She must know. She is older than me, and she knew even less than I did. But we did fine. That was my first one. And after a half a year, we went back home, and then I had a little vacation, and I started the next one. And they always sent us to the nicest places in Germany. My next one was Spital am Semmering. It was beautiful. They always picked these beautiful places, you know. I had that then. Then it was Oberammergau, Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and Graz. So every camp, I mean, it's more like a camp, just it was in a hotel, you know. So in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, that was my last assignment, we had an epidemic of scarlet fever, you know. And I had a letter that my sister was getting married, so I went home for it. And I broke out in a rash, and I had a terrible sore throat, you know. So I went to the doctor and I said, I think I have scarlet fever. And he said, why would you have scarlet fever? So he said, you have scabies. I said, what? You know? So he gave me this black sap, and I had to smear that all over my body. And but my sore throat continued, you know. So Then after a few weeks, I went back to Garmisch-Partenkirchen and I visited my friends in a hospital. They had a ski accident. So, and as I went out of the room, the doctor came and I said, look at my hands, I can peel all the skin off my fingers, you know. And she said, you go to room 83, you have scarlet fever. So there I was stuck in that one room and had all the after effects like kidney infection, rheumatism in my knees. And while I was having scarlet fever, I was quarantined for 6 weeks in that one room. So, and then they sent me home again to recuperate. And that took me a half a year to recuperate. Then I got approached by them whether I could take care of 30 boys aged 16 years old. I called them the last resort. They were trained to defend the city in case it comes to it, you know. That was funny. So when I looked at them, and if I would have said, boom, they all would have cried, you know. But that was the last resort. So and I had to cook for them. They said, do you know how to cook? And I said, yeah, you know, because I don't know how to do it. It was not in our vocabulary, you know. So, so every night I called my mother and I said, Mother, I would like to cook this. And she said, oh child, I can only tell you how to cook it for 7 people, so you have to do the rest of it. But at least I knew what goes into it, you know. So, and I married to that too. And then that one day, when the clouds were low, you could hear the airplanes, you know, and that didn't sound right to me. So I said to the guys, I go in the basement, you know. Chicken, 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 they said. I said, I don't care. So I went into the basement and I wasn't even down. They all jumped through closed windows and came out and they said, and the next time you feel like this, we go with you. Because when we came up, wherever they had confiscated a school and we lived there, you know. So then they had to move us to the Panzerkaserne. That means the tank division. That was outside Paderborn and a long alley. Yeah. So, and that is when I met my husband, because he was a trainer for the last resort. So, and I'm just sorry that I did not see them to defend the city. You know, I would have loved to see it, but I couldn't, because my husband had asked me to marry him. So we hitchhiked from Paderborn to Austria. My husband was Austrian. So it took us 3 days to get there. My husband had to stop the trucks. He said, by the command of Hitler, you have to take civilian, you know. And we went on the trucks, you know, and went to the next town. And the worst I have seen was Kassel. Kassel, you could see from one end to the other, and there was nothing standing there. But the people, they all came out of the basement, you know. So that was the worst I have seen from it. So we thumped our way all the way to Austria. We went partly by train, then by anything what had wheels. You No. So we came to Austria, and then they are all different people in Austria. They are happy-go-lucky people, you know, and nothing can face them. So even when the planes were so close, you know, so low, they were not going in the basement and all, and I couldn't understand that. I said, and he had this bunker into the hills, you know. And I said, aren't you going in the basement? No, they don't bother us. So, well, I got used to that, you know. And then we listened to what was called the Schwarzsender. That means that was a station on the radio, but you were not allowed to listen to. I didn't know anything about it, but the Austrians did, you know. So we listened to it, and we heard that Paderborn was under siege by the English, you know. So I knew I couldn't go home. So there I was stuck in Austria. I was just going to get married and go home again, you know. But there I got stuck with one suitcase. So, and then Frank had to go back, and he, since his station was Paderborn, he had to, he went to the commander, and he said, my outfit is in Italy. That was closer to home, you know, because he realized that it wouldn't take too long anymore for the war to end. So, like, he was right, because he got captured by the English and was in prison camp in Rimini, in Italy. So, and I was alone, you know, with his relatives, whom I didn't know very well, but they were very nice people. But there was another German couple there too, and he was an engineer in the steel steel company, and it was Böhler Iron and Steel Company. So, and all the townspeople worked there, and the farmers too, you know. So, because the women of the farmers did the work at home, and the men worked in the factory. So my husband, there I was alone until October. But this German family, the woman wasn't feeling too well, so I helped her out, and I stood with her all day long, and in the evening I went home, so I had something to eat. Then the war was over, and we saw the Americans on top of the hill already with a tank and jeeps, you know. And they stood there and looked down on us, and then they disappeared again. We didn't know what happened. So, but then with the Yalta, the Nieder-Austria was given to the Russians, you know. And when I saw that, I thought, and against that we lost the war. They came with their horse and buggies, you know, and I thought, oh my God, you know. So we were occupied by the Russians. Then the townspeople said, the only grocery store there, he is giving stuff away. You have to go so that you can get something too. He will give everything away. And when I got there, the poor guy was standing against the wall, and a Russian soldier was in front of him and was holding his gun and pinned him against the wall, and the people took and took and took, and I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And, but The guy never forgot that I did not steal anything from him. And he always gave me a little more, because with the ration cards, what we had during the war, we continued that a little while after the war. And I'm a girl who likes butter on her bread. To this day, I will not eat margarine. I put, and you got 50 grams of butter, and I put that on one sandwich, and that was it. that was a good sandwich then. So, and the Russians, well, they robbed and they attacked women and all this, but you could, if you could tell them, the commander, that guy did it to me, he would be punished. But they all looked the same. They all looked the same. No hair, and then they had this little white piece of material under their collar that was washed every 2 days, you know. But the uniform never was washed or cleaned, you know. But that little white was there. But they brought that to us, and we had to wash it, and they gave us soap. And every time they brought us a little wash, they gave us a piece of soap, which was good, because we couldn't buy it, you know, it was all gone. So, and when my granddaughter says, now, I'm so hungry, I think, you poor kid, you don't know what hunger means, you know. So, that is, and then, and I found out I was pregnant to all this time. So in October, Frank came home. He came from Rimini to Graz. And then the English had said to him, we won't release you because you will be under Russian occupation. And Frank said, the hell with this, you know. So he took off by himself over the hills, you know, and he came home in October 45, you know, so I was home for more than a half a year by myself, you know. Luckily, I had a postsparbuch, you know, so I could get money. So, but there's are times, you know, you just bear with it and do what you can. But since I spoke High German and they all spoke dialect, I couldn't even go what was called Hamstern. Hamstern meant you went to the farmers and did a little job for them, and they gave you eggs or bacon or whatever. You know, I couldn't do that because I was a Piefke, you know, the German. So, and it wasn't easy, but I'm glad I stuck it out because I like the Austrian people. They are very nice people. And when Frank came home, he said it was terrible to come down the hill and be face to face with the Russians because he fought the Russian war, you know. So, and he was home, and he, after New Year, he went to the factory and applied for a job, and he got it. He was an accountant, you know. So, and he worked under the Russian occupation, which was not very easy because my husband had a talent for language, you know. And he taught himself while he was in prison English, you know, and Russian. He thought, I go to the Russian zone, so I have to know some Russian. So, and he taught himself. And so he got a job right away. And there was politics. I never was very much interested in politics. So, but it was always the red and the black and I don't know what, you know, the socialists and the Catholics, I guess. So, and he had an interpreter, you know, and one time there was something going on and my husband had to go and he was asked all kinds of questions and the interpreter translated it, you know, and my husband said in Russian, that was his mistake. He said, no, that's not what I meant, you know, and he said the right things, and the guy said, how do you know Russian? And he said, well, instead of saying, I fought you, he said, I was an English prisoner, and I thought I'd go to the Russian zone, so I better teach myself some Russian. So, and he got away with it. But his older sister had married an American GI, and she was in America already. And my son was born in the year after, and so she wrote, you know, she wanted him to have a better future and all, so she arranged for us to emigrate to the States here. And it took a couple of years, you know, before that all was arranged. So, and in August 50, we arrived in Hoboken. And I was sick as a dog the whole time on the boat. And in a matter of fact, they got rid of the boat after that trip, because we came in a store and the boat not only went this way, it went that way too. And I was so sick and oh, it was awful. So, but I couldn't even listen to the radio, and I had to run and throw up already, you know. So we came to Wilmington, and he had to register because he was not 30 years old, so maybe he would be drafted here by the Americans, you know. So he went to the commander, and he said, oh, you are GI? And he said, yeah, you know, and he said, who was your commander? And he said, Guderian. He looked, you know, and he said, Guderian, he's a coward. He said, I just told you, I came over with the boat, you know, 2 weeks ago. Oh, and then he got the note, you know, we are very sorry, but we can use you. And he was very happy about that because he didn't want to go anymore. So then we put an ad in the paper, you know, for a job. And then one day, this Lincoln drove up with a skinny English woman, and she invited us to look at her estate, you know, in Galena, in Maryland. And he had a big mansion and a park, you know, all beautiful. It was a little overgrown, everything. So, and the guy said, do you think you can take care of this? He said to my husband, and my husband being an accountant and had no carousel or anything, and he said, oh yeah. And I said to myself, if he can do the park, I can do the mansion, you know, so, and we worked, I worked in the household, you know, and he did the park, and it was absolutely beautiful. I never knew he had it in him, you know. So, and we stood there for about a year, and the modern apartment was an apartment above the garage, and we had a hurricane you know, and the whole building was warped, you know. We could look down on the floor and we could look into the garage, you know. And then we had a very cold winter, so we had no blankets, you know, and we took the rugs, the throw rugs, and covered ourselves with it. And that mansion had a big closet with blankets in it. And I did not even say anything. Today I would say, one for you and one for me, you know. So, but no, that woman had me, there were steers too, and the guys took care of the steers, and then they butchered the steer, and she brought half of the steer back and said, I should cut it all in pieces, you know. I thought, what the hell? So, I kept thinking about this. So I saw it, you know, and I cut it, and I didn't even get a bone. And then I figured out, she thought, oh, she will steal it, you know, like the African American guy did, you know. So he stole them blind, you know. So today I would say, one piece for you, and one piece for me, one piece for you, and one piece for me. But I didn't know the language. But that lady, well, that woman, I make a difference between a woman and a lady. That woman, she, when I started to speak English, I didn't know any when I came over here. But when she said the same sentence the correct way, you know, and that's how I learned, you know. And I had a friend, she was here longer already. Is it time?
I'm going to give you about 3 minutes.
Okay, so then,
Okay,
so you got my life story, but now I belong to the club since we started.
Hey, I was born in there somewhere.
What?
I was born in there somewhere. Before you got to the club.
Okay, and then Diana was born.
There you go.
Diana was born. That would be time, Diana, before you were born.
1960. There
So
you go. Thank you.
I started with the club here, and when the ladies auxiliaries started, I belonged to a bowling team. And when I came here, they said, you will be the new kitchen chairman. I am? Yeah, you know how to cook. So, and I'm a member since then, and there are very few of the old members left. So, and anybody who works with me, I tell them, do a good job, but don't do it too well, otherwise it will be the job for the rest of your life. Because I know what I'm talking about, that is it. Goodbye.
Wally, we can't thank you enough for your stories. I know you're just beginning. We'll go to a part 2 one of these days. Thank you so much, and thank you, ladies, for coming and joining us for this early part. As I said earlier, some of the stories are very hard to tell. Wally does it with a twinkle, but they weren't easy stories. While we're kind of switching things over here, I do want to make an announcement and an appeal. We like to do this in January and February because there's always the possibility of bad weather, and if we have an outside guest, then we'd have to cancel, and it becomes very difficult. So we keep it in-house, and fortunately we've had wonderful weather. We've not had a problem. However, I haven't done well with getting guest speakers for February. I had Horst Fischer who was going to come, but when I talked with him earlier, he is having some physical problems and has begged off. So I would love to have 2 speakers for February. I've asked numbers of people. Some people said my story is too hard to tell, I can't do it, and I appreciate that. And you have to honor that. Some say, no, I came over when I was too young. Some say not now, later. So I'm asking you, if you have someone in this club you'd like to hear their story, ask them if they would do it in February and let me know. Okay, I need help. I can't do all of this, and I have really asked quite a few people. So you ask for me, and we'll have a wonderful program. And you can tell me at the end of this program today who it might be. Okay, on to our second speaker. Totally different. As I say, they come from different areas. Where Wally was from this section, Westfalen, is that what it would be? Yeah, Hessen. Heinz is almost off the map. And Heinz Ambrosch is going to tell you his very interesting story also. Now we'll go to Heinz.
Okay, my name is Heinz Ambrosch. I'm born in Reichenberg, what is today Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic, and the city calls now Liberec. Because I'm born 44, the first couple of years I just now from telling from my grandparents and from my mother what happened at this time. So after the war, we got told 6 o'clock in the evening, the next morning 6 o'clock you have to leave your house with 50 pounds. Then they drove us to a place, and they brought us to a camp where we stood for a couple of weeks. And my grandmother, she was sawing some gold coins in the coat, and the Czechs took everything away what was valuable. So no valuable, let's say, rings or coins or whatever you have. They took everything away. And my mother told me when she got told she has to leave, she went out in the garden, took a big stone and threw it in her trunk where she was collecting all her china and everything for her wedding, because my biological father was missing in the East Front, so they couldn't marry. Anyway, a couple of weeks in the Czech camp, they drove us with a cattle wagon to what was later on East Germany. And from there on, I know a little bit by myself, because it was a hard time. We came to a farm and with 7 persons, 1 room. It was a hard time, and there was nothing to eat because it was Russian occupied. So the farmers had to give every month, let's say they had 10 chickens, so they had to deliver every week, let's say 20 eggs. If they didn't deliver, they got in trouble. If they had 5 pigs, they had to deliver a couple to them, so they couldn't keep as much for themselves as they would like to. Anyway, when my mother married my stepfather, so we get a separate room, and then we get finally in a bigger flat where we could raise a pig and a goat. The goat was for us like the cow for little people, you know. And the rabbits and goose, and the life became better because everything was rationed in East Germany. You know, you got stamps, you could buy maybe a week a pound of butter or half pound of margarine, whatever. And meat was just too expensive, so we had to take care about ourselves to get meat on the table. My childhood was very good because we lived in a forester station. It was just 7 houses, middle in the forest. So actually I grew up with foxes and deers and wild wars or whatever. When I was 14, this was the time when actually all of the kids get out of school, except some they didn't learn a trade, they could go further at school. So I chose to learn a trade, became a baker, and had to go, and the next town was about 4 miles away, and I drove it every morning by rain or snow or whatever it was, by bicycle. And sometimes I couldn't even drive the bicycle because the snow was so high, and I have to push it to the snow. But, so I was there for 2 years, and then in 1960 I decided to go to move west. I didn't even finish my apprenticeship, but fortunately my mother's sister, she took care about me, so she got in Bad Homburg, this is close to Frankfurt. She got in a cafe where I could finish my apprenticeship. I know whether some people know Bad Homburg, they call it the mother of Monte Carlo, because this was the first casino in the world, I guess, or in Europe. And it's a spa area, so I remember when I had to carry out the rolls in the morning to the different customers, there came a lot of sheikhs came there and made vacation there. There was always something going on in this little city. And I just was, I came from East Germany and barely saw a car, and then I saw all these big, huge American cars driving to the street. So for me it was like, I was excited, But then, in 1965, we got married, our daughter was born. My story is a little bit shorter than Wally's. And I was 19 years in my trade, then I changed another job, and my wife became self-employed. 1968, 86, our daughter got married with a GI. And she moved to the US, and since then my wife became sick. So, after a couple of years, my wife said, once she went from doctor to doctor and never helped something. She was always sick, always mental, whatever, I don't know. Then she said, oh, let's go to the US. I said, okay. But I didn't think further, what happened here to me. So, since we live here now for 17 years, she's actually in good shape. And she just, liked to be close to our daughter. That helped her a lot, and this is actually my story. Any questions?
Was it hard to get from East Germany to West Germany?
Well, 1960 was easy. I remember it was August 15th when I get in the train, and actually a friend of mine wanted to come with me. When I came to him, he said, "Oh, I have to study for something because you want to give some writings to a school, so we get there." I said, "Okay, I'm going by myself." And in this time, the trains to Berlin, they were really sardine cans, is spacious. I remember when I stood in the area there, the sweat was running from my ass because it was so warm, and people were standing like this, and then the Russians came through. Then the East German police came through. Then the East German railway police came through. And I was just lucky because I was by myself, they would actually pick me out. I was standing next to a couple with huge flowers. Maybe they went to a wedding or I don't know. And maybe they thought I belonged to them. So they didn't even ask for my ID. Well, then I came to West Berlin. It was easy, just in the S-Bahn you go over and you are there. And that's how I got away. 1 year later, it was a little bit difficult.
Thank you.
Yes.
I take it you had no faith in the East German government? Or...
Not at all. Because 1954, I was visiting with my father and my mother's sister in West Germany. And I saw all, you know, what you can buy, what you can get, how easy life can be. And I decided for myself, I was 10 years in this time, and I decided for myself, you'll never stay where you are right now. I'm coming back here. And that's what I did a couple of years later. Yeah.
What kind of work did your stepfather do?
He was first a miner, because when after the war, you know, when under the Russian occupation, he had to go to the ore mountains, and they digged the uranium. And people who dig the uranium, they get better pay, and they get better food rations. So he and his cousin went there just for the money and for the food. And he was in this business till 1956, and then because we lived on the forester station, then he was working in the woods, cutting trees and cutting the sap from the collecting the sap from the trees and so on. And he made this, I don't know how long, I guess, to the 80s or something like this. Yeah. He was always working outside in the fresh air, you know. He never became sick, and he's never sick. Maybe because of this, I don't know. Any more questions?
When was the first time you went back, or did you go back to the East Germany?
Yeah, I could go back the first time in 1966. It's the first time I saw my family again. School friends and so on.
Was it difficult?
Difficult? No, it wasn't difficult. You know, my parents, they went to the police station and ordered the papers. And then they sent me the papers. And then you go on the train, because you wasn't allowed by car in this time. By car, they made it in the 70s, 80s, you could go by car, but this time you couldn't go by car, you have to always use the train.
Did you get a visa at that time?
It's not a visa, it was just an allowedness. A permit. To cross the East German border. Yeah. So more questions?
So you went to East Berlin first?
Yes, you had to.
You were 16 at the time. So
Yes,
you
yes.
didn't know anybody there.
No, no one.
Where did you stay?
In West Germany, in this time, in each sector, the Russian, British, American sector, in the Canadian sector, they had camps for refugees. Because every week, in the thousands, people came over Berlin to these camps and waiting for their processing to get flying out to West Berlin. I was there because I was 16 years old. I was just a juvenile, so they contacted my parents. So my parents, in order maybe to pick me up, but my parents said, no, we don't pick you up. Go your way. Whatever's fine for you. So they get actually a permit to visit me, because they said, or maybe they bring the boy back, but I didn't come back. So after another maybe 1.5 weeks, then I got flown out to Frankfurt, and then from Frankfurt to Bad Homburg, this is just in 15 minutes by train, and then I was on my aunt's flat, lived there for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and then I start the third Lehrjahr, or apprentice here, and finish there.
So how did you meet Eric?
Well, Erika I met when I met her early. I met her 62 when I had a job, and a friend of mine moved in a little town, and then he said, you know what, there's another bakery, a big one, maybe they look for a baker. I said, okay, let's try it. So next time we went there, and they took me. So, and Erika was in this time an apprentice in the beauty business, in the friseur. What is it called in English? I'm still learning English, so I'm not as long here. And I met her there, and I stick with her. Any more questions?
Yeah, but the band,
Yeah.
you said you were born in Czechoslovakia?
What is this today? Yeah.
What was it then?
Well, before World War I, it belongs to the Austrian Empire. Czechoslovakia was founded 1919, so it's a very young state. And in this time, I guess you should know it because you come from an area almost the same. All the ethnic Germans, and this was to 90% of the population, became Czech citizens. And all, if you want to go to the mayor, you had to speak Czech, not German. And so the Germans didn't like it because they get taken away all their responsibilities they had before. So I know from my grandfather when he said, well, Czech Republic was actually a democratic state, but we choose to call Heinz Reich. They want to be with Hitler, because then they get back their old rights. And for this, we get expelled after the war and lost everything, I guess. And it was, I guess, there was almost the same with you guys there in this area where you come from.
Yeah, except it was much earlier. It was not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It was before, during the war. With us, it was after the war. Because, if I correctly remember, before First World War, there was in 16 states were German living. After World War II, in 34 or 32 states were Germans living. So they get, cut off from everything, and then they get, wherever it was, from East Prussia, wherever, they get just thrown out. It was the ugly side from the war. Any more questions?
How was the transition to the States?
Or when we came over here? Well, I know for myself, I would have a difficult time, and I've always had a difficult time because I gave up too much. I had a beautiful job over there, good paid. I had my freedom there, and here I had to start actually under the carpet again. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me, but I did it for my wife.
Any other questions? Well, Heinz is not going to be leaving right away, so if you want to chat with him, I'm going to talk to him.
please feel free to corner him, ask him those questions you didn't want to ask him in public. I'm sure he'll be finding them interesting too. Buy him a beer, that'll be fine too. I was going to make some announcements between the speakers and I forgot. So I better do it now. The March meeting of the German genealogy group is going to be about Bremenhaven and the Emigration Museum there and the materials you might be able to find at that site. We have a group that are going there with Trudy this summer on a tour, and so we're going to try to prepare you a little bit for that event. That'll be in March. And then Joe, you want to come up and tell about April? This is Joe Weber.
Thanks, Lloyd. On April 28th, I believe that's the last Monday of April, we're going to have, the meeting's going to be at the University of Delaware Library. And Rebecca Knight, who teaches a 2-hour course down there on the use of university library facilities to do genealogy, is going to have a special session for our club down there. And there's a room there where they have about maybe 20 computers, so we'll be able to go and learn how to manipulate the computers and learn some of the resources that are available in the university. And although I don't think we'll be able to go down there after hours or when the library is open to use that room, there are public access computers in the library, and from those computers you can access all the stuff that she'll teach us during that hour and a half or 2-hour little session that she's going to have. And I think I said there's about 20 computers, so if more people come, we'll just double up. I don't think it'll be a problem. And it's really interesting, a lot of facilities, they have access to Ancestry.com and other types of library resources. When I took the course this last semester, she covered all types of genealogy. I'll have to ask her to stress German genealogy so that, of course, it'll be more relevant to us. Now, she did tell me that she did give a course here a couple of years ago. Becky Knight, does that ring a bell?
Or the German genealogy group. I think we did have somebody, well, actually, there was a time when we went to the university.
Okay,
I
well,
was
maybe.
not able to go for that event, and so I'm not sure whether others would remember her or not.
I don't remember who the presenter was, but I do remember
Being there.
about 2 or 3 years ago going down to.
But it's something we can.
Well, I think it's the same person, but she said she'd be glad to do it for us. So that's, I told her 7:30, April 28th, and we'll get the real thing on there. It's all the library facilities. And it's quite extensive, I must tell you.
Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your evening and ask your questions and chat with Heinz. Yes?
Laura, did you see the article in the paper about the genealogy, the big study that was done, and that all of us people who came from Africa?
The DNA?
Yeah, the DNA deal.
Ken Hoppecker is going to do our last program this year on DNA, and I told him I cut that article out, so we're going to be dealing with that. Thank you very much, and especially thank you, Heinz. I really appreciate it.